The next witness would wish to be known as Graham, would he?
Sir, yes, Graham Manning.
Graham, please.
Please state your full name
Graham George Manning.
and take the book in your raised hand and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence that I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Graham, when you were 9 years old in 1978, you fell over and you were taken to hospital.
That's correct.
Can you tell us what happened?
Well, I was in the playground, running around playing football.
Can you speak a little closer into the microphone?
I was in the
Closer.
in the playground and playing football, and I fell over in the playground, and my knee started swelling up, and it started to ache, and it wouldn't go down. And I remember distinctly coming home from school and I was limping, and it just wouldn't stop. It just burnt. Really, really burnt, and I knew there was something wrong. My parents knew there was something wrong. So my mum and dad took me straight down to A&E, the Brook Hospital in South East London, and that's when they did a test to see exactly why my knee had swollen up, and they thought first of all that I had water on the knee, and then they realised that I had a blood clot in the knee.
And the doctors thought at first that you had a deficiency of factor 9,
That's correct, yeah.
and you were treated with what you've described as 4 bottles of factor 9 initially, followed by another 3 bottles the following day.
That's correct. Yeah.
What were you told about where those products had come from?
Well, this was in 1978, May 1978, and the doctor, he was a very nice man, quite a young guy, and my mum and dad had bought me a Star Wars poster. I'm a big Star Wars fan then, as I am now, and basically they said, the doctor said, "Oh, great Star Wars poster, that's fantastic." And said, "Let's put this up on the wall here." And he put it up, and he turned around and said to me, he said, "Oh yeah, I love Star Wars," and I said, "I do as well. It's fantastic." And I said that he then turned around and said to me, "Well, this new medicine you had, the treatment that we're going to give you, it's from America." That's why I remember it.
You said you were really excited about receiving
Yes.
products from America because you loved all things American, and
Yeah.
particularly at that point in time you loved Star Wars.
Yes, yeah.
There aren't any batch numbers or any details in your medical records which show the particular factor 9 products that you were given.
That's correct.
But it subsequently became clear that you didn't suffer from a factor 9 deficiency. What do you know the position to be?
Well, that's right. They'd given me the 7 bottles over the 2 days, and basically they were still doing tests to see what was going on. It turned out that I was factor 8 deficient, which meant I had haemophilia, but I was so mild. So that's when they gave me the cryo factor 8, of course, which was produced here in the UK.
So you were given the factor 9 concentrate, but entirely unnecessarily because you didn't have a factor 9 deficiency.
That's correct, yeah.
Do you know whether any advice or information or warnings of any kind were given to your parents about any risks associated with that?
Not at all. I was in the hospital. Why wouldn't they? Not trust the doctors for what they're doing for me. They're there to make me better. There was no kind of choice. This is the procedure. This is what we're going to give him, and that's what they did.
you said in your statement your mother raised a concern when it became clear that they treated you with factor 9 when you didn't actually need that product, and she asked if it was dangerous, and they assured her it was nothing to worry about.
That's right. That's exactly what happened.
But her concern was not about any risk of infection.
Oh, no.
But about whether there was any danger
Oh,
to
yeah.
you from having been given the wrong clotting product.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Is it that the actual factor 9 itself, because they thought I was deficient in factor 9, but actually giving me that factor 9, somehow that would be dangerous because I didn't need it.
Do you know whether you had any particular reaction to that treatment?
I did. I remember being ill. I remember having terrible stomach pains, and that lasted for a couple of days. Yeah.
And you've said you recuperated at home with your parents. They noticed you'd become very tired and you looked a bit yellow.
Yeah, that's right. I was very, very tired once I'd come out of hospital, and I looked yellow. My parents put that down to me having an operation at the time of being in hospital and recovering from having the procedure, taking the blood clot off my knee.
And had there been any family history of haemophilia that your parents had been aware of at that stage?
No, not at all. My grandfather, we worked out actually when I was diagnosed with mild haemophilia. It worked out to be that it sort of made sense sort of going back in the past really because my grandfather, he'd actually died of a hemorrhage. It was an ulcer that burst, and they couldn't stop the bleeding. This was in 1970, I believe, and they didn't understand why it wouldn't stop bleeding. So once I was diagnosed with mild haemophilia, of course they worked out that basically he must have had haemophilia as well, and that's how we basically found out about my grandfather when I was diagnosed with haemophilia.
Now, from 1978 to 1988, you attended the Haemophilia Centre in Lewisham on a couple of occasions, but you didn't have any treatment with factor 8 in that period.
That's right, yeah.
And then the second occasion on which you received a factor product was in May 1988. What can you recall about that?
In May 1988, I'd hurt my elbow, and I basically had a hematoma, and they gave me factor 8. And it cleared it up pretty quickly, which was like I think I've heard this before, but it was like a miracle kind of drug because it would work really, really fast. It was incredible how quickly it got rid of a hematoma.
And your UK haemophilia database records show that was factor 8 BPL, is how it's
That's
recorded
correct.
in those records.
Yes.
But the UK HCDO database records don't have any record of the factor 9 treatment you'd received a decade
That's
before.
right. That's correct, yeah.
Since 1988, when you have required any treatment, what treatment have you been given?
Since after 1988, I didn't have any treatment at all until I had my gallbladder removed. I don't know. Of course, again, it was all UK sourced factor 8.
Now, in August 1992, you received a letter from the Haemophilia Centre, and that's going to come on screen in front of you, Graham. It's 1367003, please, Paul. So we can see the date of that letter, Graham, 4th of August 92. It's addressed to you from the consultant haematologist at the Lewisham Hospital Haemophilia Centre. And it says, although you may not have attended the centre for a considerable period of time, your name still appears on the register of patients. I'm writing to you to offer an appointment to attend the centre for a number of reasons. And then we've got 3 reasons set out. One is about assessing your present condition. The second is about hepatitis B. And then the third says this: people who have received blood or blood products, particularly in the past, may possibly have been exposed to infections. Some of these infections can persist for very long periods and may require treatment. We cannot know for sure whether people who have received blood products in the past are now free from such infections unless the appropriate blood tests are performed. We would like to offer them the chance to discuss these issues and if they wish to perform these tests, and then you're invited to let them know if you would like an appointment. What can you recall thinking when you received this letter?
Well, as you can see there, it's not very specific to anything really. I was such a mild haemophiliac that I'd hardly been to the centre. Because I hadn't been to the centre for so long, I was thinking this is more aimed at severe haemophiliacs rather than myself. Again, it's not very. See, I said, it can't be me. How can this be me? Because I've hardly had any factor A.
And you've also noted in your witness statement that the letter doesn't, in fact, explicitly refer to hepatitis C
That's
at all.
correct.
So you thought it was a standard letter,
Yeah.
really concerned with people who'd had regular blood
Yeah.
products. You'd received them only twice in your life, and you didn't really think it was sent with you in mind.
That's right. That's correct. Exactly. Yeah. It was that it didn't register with me that this would be something that I would have been exposed to because I just hadn't had enough of this factor A, the severe haemophilia, of course, that you're having inject yourself every day, and it just wasn't like that for me. I mean, I got to 9 years old without a scratch. So again, even after I'd been to the Brook Hospital, I hadn't been then to the centre for years.
Now, you've obtained, for the purposes of the inquiry, your medical records, and you've seen in there a bulletin that was apparently sent out to you in 1993.
Yeah.
Well, if we can have that on screen, please. It's 1367004. And if we just go to the page before that, please. There should be a letter. Thank you. So we can see it's a letter, 28th of May 1993. Dear patient, the accompanying bulletin contains important information. Please read it carefully. If there's anything you wish to discuss further, please contact the centre. And then if we go on to the next page, please. We can see there, it's called Patient Information, the Haemophilia Centre. This bulletin contains important information. Please read it carefully. And then if we go on a couple of pages, please, Paul. That's it. Halfway down that page, we can see hepatitis C update, and it says all patients treated with blood products should be tested for hepatitis C infection. If you attend regular review clinics, this should already have been undertaken and the result made available to you. And then there are various matters, other matters set out, including matters relating to the risk of sexual transmission. Now, you've got no recollection, as I understand it from your statement, of receiving this.
No, I haven't. No.
And in your statement, you say you effectively can't be certain you didn't. But
Exactly. Yeah. But I can't be certain, but it's quite a lot of information there, and really that would have really stood out. Even in respect of literally the business with that being a you would do something if you saw that. I would have done something. Again, if I somehow didn't, I wouldn't have thought I'd been at risk because I've hardly had any factor A.
Now, in October 1995, you did visit the Haemophilia Centre. And what can you recall about that visit?
Yes, because basically what it was, my sister was pregnant with my niece, and they turned around and thought, we're trying to get hold of your brother. You know what's going on? You've been trying to get hold of your brother. He needs to come in. And my sister thought that was strange. Mum and Dad thought that was strange. I said, right, okay, all right, I've got to go in. So going to have it tested for hepatitis C. I remember going in for the test, 100% confident. Absolutely no way could I be infected with hepatitis C.
Were you told if any other tests were being undertaken?
No.
If we can have up on screen, please, 1367005. This is an extract from your medical notes, Graham, 23rd of October 1995. It's a reference to haemophilia A, factor 8. And then, if we look halfway down the page, it's got HIV, Hep A, B and C. You were obviously aware that you were tested for hepatitis C. Were you aware of, or were there any discussions about any testing for HIV or hepatitis A and B?
Not at all. Not at all.
You then returned for the test result. What can you remember about that?
I remember came back for the test result. I think I'm never going to forget it. Again, I felt very confident. Went in there. It was impossible. You just couldn't. You wouldn't. I'm not going to be infected. This is crazy. I'm not going to be infected. I sat down, sitting down, and a doctor turned around and said, "Unfortunately, I have some bad news for you. You have been infected with hepatitis C. You're contracted hepatitis C." And my whole world fell apart. Disbelief, anger. I was in shock. I remember saying, how could this happen? How can I be infected when I've hardly had any factor? And that really, and I wanted answers. And all I got back was, I'm so sorry, but I'm afraid it's just happened.
And if we go back to that same document, please, Paul, 1367005, the bottom of the page, we can see that it there says, patient told Hep C positive result, counselled, very angry as has had minimal exposure to blood products. What information were you given? We can see that it's suggested there, advised curtailing alcohol intake. Top of the next page, sexual transmission, need for regular follow-up, repeat Hep C, lettery result, and you were subsequently sent a letter with the specific genotype. What, if any, other information can you recall being given at that consultation about the condition?
Sharing toothbrushes. Basically, with the sexual transmission, I was told to use condoms, but they said that it was they didn't feel that it was a very, that way. It's not basically, there's more of a chance of other ways. So they said really for the main thing, toothbrushes, alcohol intake as well. Yeah.
And you've said in your statement you were told nothing about the prognosis of the infection other than you could get liver cancer.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
What can you recall about your immediate reaction when you walked out from the hospital that day?
Well, as I was being told, I had a brand new company car and I could hear the alarm going off in the car park. And I just didn't give a damn because I was in shock. I was been hit by this something that I never expected to be told. I remember getting to the car, sitting in it for a while, and started driving off. It's in Lewisham. I worked, at the time we worked, offices were in Greenwich. So it wasn't too far to Greenwich. I remember crying in the car, think I'm going to die. I'll never get life insurance. I'll never get a mortgage. I'll never have children. I'm going to die before get old. I remember pulling over the side of the road and ringing my mum. And I remember saying to her, Mum, I've got it. And her disbelief on the other end of the telephone. I look back at that now and I feel guilty that I did that. If that doesn't make any sense, but I feel that telling my own mother that out of the blue and shocking her as much as I was shocked and terrified. I still can't work out to this day why I did it, but I then drove back to work. Of course, I can't tell anybody. No one even knew I had mild haemophilia. It was something that just get on with my life. So it's kind of the way I deal with a lot of things. And I remember my general manager, wonderful man. And but he had no idea, of course, where I'd been. And I said I've been to the hospital to see my sister, because my sister's having a baby, and make sure everything's okay. He said, "You okay?" He said, "What time have you been? What's going on? You've been late. You're late." You're like, "Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're all right. You're okay. Yeah. It's just been some complications." I said, right, okay. Which is awful when you think about me saying that, but I think it's the first thing come in my head. And then sat back down at my desk, staring at my screen, and I thought, remember looking at the clock as well, thinking, I just want to get home. I got back home, fell to pieces, was angry, to tell my dad. He took it really hard. It was either that night or a couple of nights afterwards, I had this nightmare. And this nightmare it was so vivid. It was a beautiful sunny day. I was in a graveyard. There was a funeral going on. And then I found out that it's actually my funeral. And everyone's dressed in black. And I'm in the coffin. I can see down the sides of the grave. Something lowering me down. And I'm scrambling to get out. I'm alive. Get out, I'm alive. And I just, I woke up on the landing. I'd actually scrambled out of bed, thinking I was getting out of the coffin, and I just landed literally on the landing. And to my parents, what's wrong? You okay? Yeah. Oh, I'm having a nightmare. I'm sorry, I'm a nightmare.
You were obviously unaware until that point of your infection. Looking back at that point, had you experienced any of the physical symptoms of hepatitis C, do you think, by then?
No, not at all. No.
You've said in your statement that you did have tiredness and confusion and muddle sometimes at school. Do you know whether that's attributable to the hepatitis C?
I believe now, looking back now, yeah. At the time, of course I didn't know. And I used to struggle with just the simplest things. Get things around the wrong way. Mess up. Brain fog. Feeling really tired. I mean, exhausted, tired. But, I used to think to myself, other people must feel like this. I can't be the only one who feels like this. Other people must feel like this. I felt different in a way. I can't explain it. I did feel different.
How did you react then? You've told us of the immediate reaction.
Yeah.
And the reaction you experienced a day or two later. In the months and years that followed, how did the diagnosis impact upon you?
I fell apart. fell apart. I drank a lot. I just thought, why me? Why me? I felt incredibly selfish. Because I look back on my life then, and I thought this was just happened to me. I just thought it happened to me. It didn't happen to anybody else. It just happened to me. You felt you were on your own with this. It was a secret I couldn't tell anybody, but of course my family were the only ones who knew. We hid it from the outside world. I didn't let any of my work colleagues know. I didn't let any of my friends know, because I felt that they would look at me differently. Made me feel like a leper on the fringe of society. I was different, I was tarnished, I was dirty. The terror of me accidentally infecting someone was from the start. I was very, very conscious of that. I remember having my mum and dad's, and we had toothbrushes in this thing. And my mum had separated it, mine from my dad's and my sister's and me. And hers, and I remember seeing that. And I thought, no, I'm going to put it back with the others. I just remember that. It's not. It just made it so real. You felt that you were so different. You were tarnished, as I say. You were just leper. It was something that controlled my every single day. When I looked in the mirror, every single day, that thing was there. If I cut myself shaving, I'd be terrified to get any blood anywhere. If I had nosebleeds, even now, I have nosebleeds now, I'm terrified of getting the blood anywhere. And it's like that, because you think that you could then spread this and give this to somebody else. And the thought of me giving it to somebody else and killing them is something that plays on my mind.
You explained in your statement that even whenever you brush your teeth or shave, you'll disinfect the entire
Yes,
sink.
that's right, exactly. I literally wash everything down with disinfectant, bleach. In that routine, after I've brushed my teeth or I've had a nosebleed or anything like that, then I do that. I clean it all up.
And you started drinking heavily, as you've
Yes.
told us. You were convinced you wouldn't get married and that you would die extremely young.
That's correct. It was very, very difficult. I met between what's going to be my future wife. She was. I met her, and I didn't tell her for around about 2 months that I was infected with hepatitis C. I was very careful, but it was something that was eating away at me. I thought, how can I tell her this? And eventually plucked enough courage up to tell her, and she fell about crying. Oh no, it's terrible. But she stuck. Right then, she did. She stuck by me then, and it was a secret again that she couldn't tell her parents or her friends or anyone else. So this is what we were doing. We're just living this lie, trying to get on with your life, going to work, doing everything you can as a normal situation, but it wasn't normal. It was always there.
You put it this way in your statement, Graham. Every single day I would think about having hepatitis C.
Yeah.
And you'd be at work and you'd think about it.
Every day.
You couldn't tell anyone at work. And you were turning down offers of things like private medical care at work because you'd have to disclose the condition.
That's correct. I'd had a pension when I was from when I was 21, a private pension, and the company decided that what we're going to do is going to have a company pension, and That's great. I was doing well at work, blotting out secret, putting everything I can into my work. And this scheme was to start. And then they said about life cover, part of the pension plan, a life cover. And that's when I got really, really anxious. I was really upset because I thought they're going to find out. They're going to find out that I've got hepatitis C because they won't give me the life insurance policy if they won't insure me. I'd had the pension going, as I say, my personal pension, which is basically it was all combined into one company pension. So they did give me life cover for what I had in the pot. But it was lower than everyone else in the company. And I remember the financial advisor turned around and saying, "It's strange that yours is lower than everyone else." Well, must be. I said, "Must be my age. Must be my age." "Oh yeah, you're right. Must be. Yeah, don't do your age. Yeah, okay." The reality of it was I had to go and see the GP because the company actually wrote to my GP, and I had to have a test and everything else. And I remember going to see him, and I literally fell to pieces in his surgery, saying, "I'm terrified of my work finding out about this. I can't have that happen. It would destroy everything." Because I'd used my work was a way of I could just feel like I'm normal, and to have that secret out, I wouldn't, and then everyone could see I wouldn't be normal. And so, yeah, that really was hard.
From 1995 onwards, you described in your statement you were seen at the Lewisham Haemophilia Centre. You had regular blood tests, liver function tests, and you've said in your statement you were made to feel like cattle being herded through the system. What did you mean by that?
Yes, it was very like that. I'd go along for another liver function test. It was a blood test. And you go along, you have this test, go along to the next one, you have the other test. And it was like that. You're being herded through a system. And sometimes I actually went, "Oh, and what are you here for again?" This is the haematologist actually saying to me, "Oh, what are you here for again?" "Liver function test." "Oh, right, yeah, okay, nothing. Oh, you got your results from last time. Yeah, they're fine. They're okay, they're fine." And even in the early days, I was always concerned when they're going to turn around and say, "It's not fine." You always had that anticipation of something, they're going to find something else. Because I think as well, combined with not thinking I even had Hep C, that going to go and see them again, I was going to give them even worse news. So it was very like that. It was very sort of methodical. It was always the same kind of thing. You went in there, it was always the same laborious process.
And you describe your then wife used to come to the consultations with you, and you'd sit in the waiting room and no one was speaking to each other, and you felt like a leper.
Yes, because you felt you're on your own. You thought you were on your own. You didn't think that anyone else had been tarnished with this. And it's interesting. I used to go that thought in my mind when I used to see people sitting in the waiting room. I used to think to myself, I wonder if they've got hepatitis C. Because it was a haemophilia centre, so people went there for all sorts of things. And so that was, that was something I used to think of a lot.
You were desperate for treatment that would rid you of the hepatitis C.
That's right.
And in the autumn of 1996, you underwent treatment.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, the first interferon treatment that I had was very, very difficult. Very, very difficult indeed. But again, I had that kind of mentality to, I'm going to give this my best shot. I'm going to get rid of this thing. And I'll take any treatment I can to get rid of this thing out of my life. And they said it would be hard. And I thought, okay. But the flu-like symptoms it gave you and the fever I felt, the sickness, the headaches, it was just awful. But they took me off the treatment early because it hadn't been working.
You weren't responding,
That's right. Sorry, I haven't responded.
and so it came to an end. And you've said in your statement you were very angry because you still had the virus.
Yes. Yes.
So you started in July 2003 a second course of treatment. This was pegylated interferon with ribavirin. What can you tell us about that second treatment, Graham? If it's easier for me to read it from your statement.
That's okay. It's a living hell. First 6 months were very, very hard. Really, really hard. You had to get through to a checkpoint. It was the first 6 months. And then you were tested to see if the virus was still active. I had some great news so I got to 6 months and they said that, no, Graham, it's working. There's no sign of the virus. It's affecting the virus. No sign of it. And I was over the moon. I was like, yes, this is great. This is brilliant. This is fantastic. Come on, you can do this. You can do this. The last 6 months of that treatment was the hardest thing I have ever done in my entire life. I was holding on to the fact that the device itself had gone. But it was so awful. I had scabs on my head, my mood swings, terrible. I turned into this monster. The flu-like symptoms, and when I say flu-like symptoms, it was like a raging torrent of you feeling ill all the time. I'd find that getting worse actually in the afternoons after I had something to eat. I would at work, I'd feel absolutely terrible. I was sitting at my desk feeling absolutely lousy. And of course, no one knows what's wrong with me. I remember having a go at my boss and screaming and shouting at him. And years later, I had to apologise to him and said, look, I'm so sorry. The reason I was like that is because I was on the treatment for Hep C, and I wasn't myself. With the treatment itself, and I look back now, there was a Graham before the interferon treatment, the second interferon treatment, and a Graham after. I was a completely different person. And so I got through to the last 6 months, got through to finish the treatment. I remember the doctor turning around and saying to me, well done, you've done it. Because some people were sectioned while on the treatment because they wanted to harm themselves. And he said, you've done it, well done. I mean, I actually had problems with my teeth as well, which was unusual. And I remember telling this to the doctor. And he said, that's unusual, I've not had that before. And so he said, you've done it, you've completed the treatment. But I'm afraid, I believe it was, I can't remember now, I think it was a month or so afterwards, I had to go back for them for the final check after being off the interferon treatment to see if it actually had eradicated it. And unfortunately, it came back. So I did all that treatment, feeling lousy for nothing. I got to a very low point after that. And as I said, there was a different Graham after that treatment.
Physically, how was the hepatitis C, or indeed the treatment over these years, impacting upon you?
It really did. Every day, as I said earlier, that every single day I look in the mirror and I knew I was infected. I knew that I could pass this on. By now I was married. It was hard living with this thing within the marriage. Again, it was a dirty secret that we'd never told anyone about. Through the interferon treatment as well, my marriage actually failed in the end, but it didn't. I wouldn't say it's all down to the treatment or the hepatitis C. But let's put it like this, it certainly didn't help having that in my marriage. And so it was very, very tough, very, very, very difficult to keep going with that and not telling anybody. And it was very hard. And when my marriage started falling to pieces, I thought I'd look into how I got infected. And through social media, Facebook, I found other people and the campaign groups. And it changed my life in a positive way, because I found out I wasn't on my own anymore, and that I was with people who understood, and people who had gone through far terrible things as well than myself. And that really, really opened my eyes to it. From being so selfish before that I felt, but when I actually see what this had done to other people. I remember going to my first demo at Westminster, and I met amazing people, absolutely amazing people. And it's incredible. I met a man called I really respect a lot. We were quite similar, about a year older than me. He was a mild haemophiliac, like myself, and I remember walking through Westminster, through Parliament, the main entrance hall, and we were talking. And he said, "Graham, you did lots of interferon treatment." And I said, yeah, I did. I said, "How did you do that?" He said to me, "How did you do that?" And I just looked at him and I thought, this is a man who's had a liver transplant, and he's asking me, how did you get through that interferon treatment? And it just totally changed my outlook of, rather than me looking inside myself, than looking at what happened to other people. And another incident as well at the same demo. I've never actually, I don't really know the lady's name, and I can't really place her in the campaign now, but I was standing outside and she came up to me and she said, "You look, my God," you said, "you look so much like him." I said, "Have you been here before?" I said, "No, I'm just the first time I've been here." And she said, "My God, you look so much like him. You look so much like him." And then her daughter came up as well and said, "Oh my God, you look so much like him." It's her son. I looked like her son, who died of hepatitis C. The pain in that lady's eyes, I will never forget. I will never forget the pain in that woman's eyes. It changed me again. It changed me and fired me up to this. We are going to right the wrongs of what happened.
Graham, you started taking medication for your depression in about 2008.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And how has your health psychologically, mentally, emotionally been since then?
It's just got worse. It's got worse. It's, as I said earlier, I'm a real fighter. It's how I've been brought up. You keep going. You get up the next day. It'll be a better day than the day before. But it's very hard to keep getting back up again when you've been kicked in the teeth. You keep getting back up again. You have to face it. You get hit again, you go down, you get it. It is very, very difficult. I've been on different antidepressants. I've just seen a counsellor, which helped. I was going through troubles in my marriage as well, so the counselling helped with that, as well as I felt with the hepatitis C. But it's just, as I say, my marriage fell to pieces. I got divorced. My ex-wife, I think what it was the I had my own fears of infecting anybody, especially with my sons. Terrified that somehow I might accidentally infect them. I remember this happened so many times, really, where the ex-wife, the kids had hurt themselves, and I'd go up to see them. And, look, it's okay. I can't come in. No, she used to say to me, get away from them, get away from them, get away from them. Don't go near Daddy. Don't go near him. Because, that's how I felt anyway. You're looking at it and you think, that's what I am. I can infect them. I can infect the people I love. That was very, very hard. And just the mental thing of it all is the thing that's hit me the hardest than anything else. It's the flu-like symptoms that I still get. It's the constant madness. If I'm brutally honest with you, it's the constant madness. I feel like I'm screaming inside. I'm trying to be strong, I keep saying, you can do it. Pull yourself together. You can do it. But it's screaming inside. It's very hard. And I find, as I say, with the campaign, it helps because I'm with people who understand and I can fight for the cause that we all believe in and for justice. And that has helped me. But this thing it has been getting worse. And I'm under Brighton Mental Health now as well. My GP is very good and they give me antidepressants. And yeah, I'm hopefully, as I say, it's something that's ongoing, and I'm hoping that I'll get it resolved.
Amongst other things that you went through, you had a serious pain in your rib cage in mid-2001, and that resulted in your gallbladder having to be removed.
That's right, yeah.
And do you understand that to be related to the hepatitis
Yes,
C?
yeah, it's related to hepatitis C.
You, in 2004, received the first of various letters about VCJD, suggesting a possible risk of infection. What, if anything, can you recall about that and how it impacted upon you?
Again, it was, I'd just come off, I remember seeing one of the letters, and I'd just come off the treatment for interferon treatment, the second one, and I was messed up anyway. I was different man. I was broken man. I felt inside. And I couldn't even bring myself to look at that. What is this? No, I'm not looking at it. I'm not looking at it. And that's how I dealt with that. I can't remember seeing the second letter, but I looked at my notes, and it's just from 2000. I'm sure 2008, 2009. I'm sure, but that's about my marriage was falling to pieces anyway. So if I had seen it or it had been, I wasn't in the right place again to even look at that.
And we've got the letters. I'm not going to put them up on the screen, but you got letters in 2004 and again in 2009, and what you've said in your statement is you don't really understand from them where you stand in terms of risk.
No. It's insane. There's nothing there to state that there's a test. You've been exposed to it. You've been exposed to it. I mean, in the actual letter that I looked at, and it says, if you want to know, please indicate here and send this off to us, and we'll let you know. If you don't want to know, that's fine. Please state if you don't want to know, or if you don't reply. So it's a very bizarre kind of letter because again, there's no kind of test for it, as I say. So it's all sort of up there in the air. So yeah, it's and I didn't know. I mean, last year I started getting my medical records together, and I contacted the haemophilia database. And strangely, on the database itself, it did say if you wanted to know that if you've been, you've been exposed to variant CJD, then please indicate yes or no. Strange. Years later, they still seem to be saying the same thing. So I put on there, yes, I want to know. And it came back, and my haematologist just said, yes, I've been exposed, and the date that I think it was 2001, I think, I might be wrong, 2001 I think it is. And that, does he know? And it says no. So that was another bombshell last year. Subsequently, I found out it was 840 of us who have been exposed to it as haemophiliacs.
You've started a further course of treatment for hepatitis C in September of last year.
Yes.
How did that affect you in terms of side effects?
Yes. Now, I was very after the unsuccessful treatment, the last interferon treatment. I was apprehensive of taking any more treatments. But also, then I was then transferred to St Thomas's from Lewisham. Again, this is not about haemophilia. This is all to do with the hepatitis C. There was nothing about the haemophilia. It's all to do with the hepatitis C. So I went to St Thomas's, and I can't remember the consultant's name now, because I've had a few of them. But he turned around and said to me there was a trial about to happen for like an antiviral treatments coming in. He said, there's one here, I think, looking at your response to how you were on the interferon, we feel that you got a good chance of clearing the virus. So I thought, okay, all right. The side effects, not as bad as interferon at all. You know, we've got problems. What's that? The problem is it's not licensed yet. You have to wait till it's licensed, which she found incredibly frustrating. So I was on this list. They asked me, would I agree to have blood taken so they could work out why I'd responded so well with the interferon, the virus going, but then why it came back, and I didn't understand why it did that. And I said, well, listen, that's fine. I agree with that. It can help others, and let's do that. So he did that for me. Years went by. I was still having the test. This time you're having a fibro scan once a year and a normal scan every 6 months, as well as the blood liver function tests. So you would then, the day of the scans, and even now it scares me, again, is this the day I'm going to find out I have liver cancer? Is this the day they're going to find something? So you have all that worry. This went on for a number of years. The drugs, antiviral drugs, had been licensed, but it was all down to the cost and the budgets. I can distinctly remember that at St Thomas's, the budgets, and they were giving it to people who, really did need it right there and then. We're talking about different state liver cancer, chronic liver disease, cirrhosis. I was very, very aware of that. I felt that no, that's only right that people who are in that situation need to be treated now. And so, but it was a bit of a pill to swallow. As I said, I was sort of like a waiting game for me for when it could happen. I believe it's in 2016. I was given the green light to have the treatment. But leading up to 2016, my mental health had got even worse. I was not in the right place. It was horrific. I can't tell you how dark a place can be, how dark a valley can be, with no sides, you're just stuck in this terrible place, just feeling ill, just feeling despair, sick. And this is all in my head. It was just getting worse and worse and worse, and so I thought, I've got to do something about this. I was scared because of the interferon treatment I had before, which made me feel terrible. The doctors had said to me, these antiviral drugs, they're not as bad as interferon. The side effects are nothing like interferon. I'll be honest, I looked at that and I thought, I don't trust what you say. And I spoke to guys on the campaign, and I said to them, listen, about it. Look, they've had the treatment, Graham. It's not like interferon. Okay, I was then concerned about what I've seen reports that it could be a relapse where you clear the virus, but then the cirrhosis starts. But it got so bad that I thought, right, I have just got to take this treatment, and so I said yes to that, and I was one of the last ones, I believe, in St Thomas's to have it. I was about, I think, 3 or 4 of us left. I think we'd all been on the interferon, and of course we didn't want to go for that hell again.
And how was it?
Well, the actual treatment itself was tablets, Zepotir. So you take 1 tablet a day, and it went on for 12 weeks. The side effects were, how can I put it? Nothing like interferon. Absolutely nothing like interferon at all. I would have you could tell between the flu-like symptoms I'd been having for years and when I was actually on the Zepotir treatment. It was different in that respect. But the only biggest thing I noticed was the heart problems I had. Now, I've never had a heart problem. I've never had palpitations like this. It happened the moment I started the treatment. I'd had an ECG before I took the treatment, which I thought was a bit odd. Why to give everyone an ECG before you start the treatment? When I took the first tablet, it literally happened within the second or third day. I started getting palpitations. I started getting out of breath. It got so bad that I started getting a pain in the middle of my chest. My heart felt like it was coming out of my chest. My left arm went numb. I had a pain in my arm. And I thought, right now, I think I'd better ring up St Thomas's and tell them this is just not right. And I had been speaking to them already about it, saying, look, I'm having these things. And they said, well, look, we'd check you. And they checked me out. Everything had come back fine. But when I was having this thing with my arm and the middle of my chest, they said, no, we want you to stop the treatment now. This was on a Friday. So I stopped the treatment on the Friday for the Saturday and the Sunday, and then I went up to see them on the Monday. They then asked me, do you want to carry on? My test results from then had been brilliant. I'd gone from 800,000 viral count down to 6. I incorrectly thought that was 6,000, but I found out it was actually 6. So 800,000 viral count down to 6 in the space of, I believe, a week and a half to 2 weeks, which was incredible. It's something I'd had for 40 years. So it was an incredible thing. So they gave me the choice to carry on, and I'm glad I did it because I then retook the tablets. I did have palpitations again, but it was nothing like it had been before, which is strange. Having that break for 2 days, something happened. I'm not sure what it was, but I didn't get back to where I was before. But I'd had a lot of ECG follow-ups. I'd had a scan on my heart. Everything had come back normal. I'd had all the blood tests on my heart. Everything come back normal. So whatever it was, as I say, it was very strange. But once I finished treatment, while I was on the treatment, the thing that got me the most was not having the flu-like symptoms in my life anymore. I recognised that within the first week and a half I was taking the treatment. Not having the flu-like symptoms was like a break in the clouds for me. It was a different. I cannot tell you the relief I had not having it in my life anymore. You did have a little the symptoms of the drug itself, but I could actually tell the difference between that and how I'd been feeling for years. So that was a real eye opener. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that the symptoms have come back again over the last month and a half or so.
In terms of the treatment itself, you finished it and you went back in February 2019
That's
this year.
right. Yeah.
And what's the outcome in terms of the clearing of the virus?
That's right. So in February of this year, I was given the thumbs up that there was no sign of the virus at all. And that really, that was fantastic. That was really, really good. My blood pressure had been high while I was on treatment, and it had been high before. And they were looking into that, and they still are looking into that. But yeah, that's basically where it is with that. Then I had to go back every 6 months, which I'm doing now. But in the program, every 6 months to have a scan and a fibro scan to make sure everything is okay. That could peter off though as time goes on. I'm not happy with that, and I do still want the regular checks. But as I say, that's something that hopefully will be resolved going forward.
But in the last 4 to 6 weeks, is that right? You've started.
Well, yeah, it's about a month. Yeah, about that. I've been feeling just lousy again. The flu-like symptoms have come back. I've had a pain now. This is the second time I've had it. I had it a few weeks ago, and I've had it this week underneath my ribs. It's a dull ache that I recognise because I've had that for years because it's a sign of the virus. And I've had the tiredness has come back as well, which is I'll say annoying, because it is annoying. It can come out of anywhere, and you're just absolutely exhausted. Me being me, I fight against it, but it is a real. It's just something that just happens and you can't control. But the worst thing without doubt is the flu-like symptoms. I feel I'm at a crossroads with that. I cannot stand that anymore. Having that break from not feeling like that, and then to have it again now, is I will admit to you, is shattering. But again, I am going to do something about that, and hopefully this will be she'll get some help there.
You mentioned you'd had some counselling.
Yeah.
As I read your statement, Graham, but correct me if I'm wrong, please, that's because you've accessed the help of local mental health services.
Yes.
And that's the reason you've had counselling.
Yes.
Has any counselling ever been offered to you specifically in relation to your infection and the treatment that you've undergone for it?
Since I've been at St Thomas's, yes. But again, they're overstretched. There doesn't seem to be resources for that. It's also as well, it sounds crazy, but I've got my job. I've got a job, and I've got to work for my job, and having the help. It's not something I can do after work and everything else. Now it sounds crazy again, but I don't want it. I want to carry on. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I want to be able to run a normal life as much as I can. But as it has got progressively worse over the last few years. So St Thomas's have offered it, but it's not something that I feel that is going to be that easy to access all the time. And again, as I say, because we're overstretched.
You've made applications to Caxton, Skipton and EOBSS.
Yes.
What's your experience been of the process?
It's just long-winded, laborious process, which is, heartless in a way. It's just heartless. It's something that we shouldn't have to be jumping through hoops for, or having hurdles put in front of us. It should be able to access it so much easier. I mean, I needed help with a car, and just so I could get to work, and they were the whole laborious thing. I had to get different quotes. Okay, send that off. But then they had to have a meeting once every, I'm not sure how many weeks it was now. And that, depending on what they say in that meeting, that's when it gives you the yes or no. So yeah, it was very very long-winded kind of process.
And you put it this way in your statement: you wouldn't hear back from them for 6 weeks if they had a meeting to decide
That's
if
right.
you were worthy.
Yeah.
That's how you.
Yeah, that's
felt
how it
about
felt. That's exactly how it felt, and it also felt that you're going cap in hand as well. And I've heard that several times through the inquiry. But it is so true. You feel you lost your. They've damaged our health, and they've lost our sort of pride in a way as well, because you're made to feel that you're some kind of charity case for something that wasn't our fault. And that's the real thing here. None of this was our fault. For us guys, the bleeding disorder, we were born with haemophilia, but we weren't born with hepatitis C or HIV. So it's a very cruel way we've been dealt with. It's just a real something just added to the disaster, really. Yeah.
Graham, those are the questions I have for you, but do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, if I may. I'd like to say, first of all, Mr. Bryan, and to the inquiry, thank you for letting the victims and families talk. It's something that we've not been able to do for decades. To live in a world, in our community, in silence for so long because we're scared of basically what people think, what loved ones think, people, friends. But we sort of work together. We had that bond together. And I'd just like to say thank you for everyone giving their statements, because it takes an awful lot of courage. It really does. I've met some amazing people in the campaign groups. I mean, they're incredible people. These people are like brothers and sisters to me. And that's what we're like. We're like a band of brothers and sisters. Against something that should never have happened. It should never have happened. When you look at how we got infected, and you look at the mistakes that were made, the whole political ideology, if I could put it that way, which led to the disaster, where self-sufficiency, producing factor 8, and collecting factor from UK source blood, those plans were scrapped again because of one thing, because of money. And money has been at the heart of the disaster. It's why it's never, ever been resolved. And I'd just like to just quickly quote something. This is from a book written by Simon Garfield. It's an extract from a book by Simon Garfield. It's called The End of Innocence. He attributes this to Edwina Currie. Because there were a lot of them and it was expensive, simple as that. It is not government policy to compensate people who are the subject of medical accidents. We looked very seriously at compensation possibilities to avoid poor souls having to take cases to court. But the cost of doing it was horrendous, because compensation usually in this country, takes into account loss of earning power and potential length of life. So you're talking about settlements of 1 million. Another less public argument received much support at the Department of Health. Payments would have gone to people who ain't going to get better, whose medical circumstances are not going to improve. Curry says, many of the more recent compensation cases will pay money during to the individual's lifetime rather than a lump sum. But the practice then firmly was to give a lump sum based on a calculation, and then your haemophilia patient might die 3 weeks later, and hey presto, you've got a very wealthy family. They haven't got haemophilia, they haven't got AIDS, but they've got £1 million of public money, which could have been used to help treat other patients. And on the whole, that continued to be my feeling. If people are hurt inevitably by treatment that in fact has made their lives better, it's awfully difficult to see where the legal position might lie. I think that just sums up why not just this present government, but previous governments have not looked at it. It has all been down to money. It's all been down to political people held and responsible for what they did. It's also the pharmaceutical companies. 1970s, 1980s, Qatar was one of the biggest producers of Factor 8 and Factor 9 in the world. Bayer, as you all know now, basically took over Qatar. They have a responsibility, as well as the other pharmaceutical companies, as well as the government, to do something now. What really worries me is we've had over 107 people die so far since the inquiry was announced back in Parliament in 2017. More people are going to die by the end of this inquiry. That's going to happen. And I know that plays on everyone's mind in this room. And we have a duty. We have a duty for those people who aren't going to be here by the end of the inquiry to do the right thing and do the right thing now. And I think that the government need to realise that. We need to stop the games, because there have been a lot of games. Trying to get the Department of Health, for example, off the inquiry has been... It's been awful how the games that they've played and the people, they just don't seem to care. And I think I can say that throughout the whole of the disaster, that people don't seem to care, from government officials, pharmaceutical companies, even some haematologists, and that's the thing with the tragedy. It's just been it's still going on. The disaster is still happening. It's not like it's over 30 or 40 years ago. It's still happening right now. And it is up to the government to say enough's enough and do the right thing for people who have suffered for too long. And it's been, and just do the right thing in our society, because we owe it to the people we've lost. We owe it to the ones who are alive. And we owe it for the other generations so that this never, ever happens again, because it could happen again. Where you have pharmaceutical companies, again, the profits are more important than people's lives. The people who have died, you hear all the figures, and it's the numbers. Well, these aren't just numbers, they're people, they're real lives, real families destroyed, smashed to pieces. It was genocide. Total genocide. And we deserve to have the people who have questions to answer to appear in front of the inquiry. Not to write letters, not to try and dodge out of things, not to try and run the same old thing, oh, there's nothing else we could have done. because the people we've lost deserve answers. The families deserve answers. We deserve answers. So, as I say, never happens again. I just wanted to quickly say this about one of this form, which is EIBSS form for funding for certain things, to say for people who are infected. And the thing that I could not believe when I saw this is to apply for a funeral prepayment plan payment. The applicant must send this in, a completed discretionary one-off payment application form, and a quote for the prepayment funeral plan. A quote for prepaid funeral plan. It says here, a copy of the funeral invoice or receipt. We're not talking about double glazing. We're not talking about something that is trivial. A widow gets that and has to go through that. They haven't been through it enough already. There doesn't seem to be any fault. There doesn't seem to be any humanity. And that's the thing that was lost of what happened to us. Humanity lost in madness and chaos, as I say, political ideology, pharmaceutical greed. There are people who have to answer for what happened. No matter how difficult this is, they must answer for what happened. We cannot have closure until that happens, sir. We cannot have the closure until that happens. We have lost too much, and we're going to lose even more. This thing has consumed so many. Even in the campaign, we lose people, and we keep going. We lose people, we keep going. People get ill. You don't see them anymore. It's just, why would people in authority allow this to continue? It's just wrong, and as I say, it's something that the government needs to look at now and act on. That's all I wanted to say.
Graham, I'm just going to ask Mr. Snowden if there's anything he would like me to add.
Yeah.
Thank you, there's nothing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Graham, thank you very much for coming to share your evidence and your thoughts with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
As you will probably know, this is the last day of our hearings in London until October. The inquiry is a UK-wide inquiry. It takes that seriously, and because it is more difficult for those who live in some parts of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, for instance, parts of Scotland, the north of England, Wales, to get to the inquiry, as people ought to be able to do. This is a public inquiry. It seeks to put people at its heart, and so we go as best we can. to where we are going to serve more people and better able to take their evidence at their convenience. So next week, if you happen to be in Leeds, you may not be, but if you are, you're very welcome to come to the inquiry where we sit again on the 11th of June. We shall be in Leeds for 2 weeks. Then after a week spent in preparation, we shall be 2 weeks in Edinburgh, and after a further week preparation, a week in Cardiff. But I can tell you now that we have been reviewing the needs to accommodate as many people as we reasonably can. As I've said a number of times, we certainly can't take oral evidence from everyone who would wish to give it. We have to make a selection. That's inevitable, and I think all of you who are here and those who may be listening have understood that, even though it may mean that their own wishes to give oral evidence have been disappointed. I'm sorry if that's the case, but it's to an extent inevitable. However, we are going to have a third week of evidence from those infected and affected in October, or in November, when, as you know, at that time of the year, we had originally been planning to have 2. There will be further opportunities, I should add, for those who have been infected, those who have been affected by the infection of others, to give evidence throughout the inquiry from time to time, and as I promised at the outset, at the end as well as at the beginning. And I say that because there are still those who are hesitating about giving witness statements. There are those amongst them who may feel that they would wish to give oral evidence, but may be feeling that they have missed the boat. They haven't. There is space for some. As I've said, it won't be for all. I would be dishonest if I said that. But there will be space for some throughout the inquiry until it closes. But for now, thank you for your attendance here in London. We sit again to hear evidence at 10:30 in Leeds on the 11th of June. And I look forward to seeing some of you when we meet again, either there or here in October, when we are due currently to start on the 8th of October. If there's a change to that schedule, then you'll be told of it in good time. Thank you very much.